In the beginning, darkness covered the abyss, an infinite void where not even time existed. Then suddenly God said, "Let there be light." And by an indescribable power, light was born, bursting through the eternal darkness, revealing for the first time the vastness of creation. And God saw that the light was good. This was only the beginning. In the days that followed, the Creator separated the waters, raised continents, blanketed the earth with lush vegetation, and filled the skies with countless stars. But the pinnacle was yet to come. From the dust of the earth, God would shape His masterpiece, His own image. In the Garden of Eden, a paradise bursting with fruit-bearing trees, vibrant birds, and crystal-clear rivers, God formed Adam from the dust, sculpting him with perfection and breathing life into his nostrils. At the center of Eden stood two sacred trees, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Despite the beauty and abundance of the garden, God saw Adam's loneliness. So He caused the man to fall into a deep sleep, took one of his ribs, and from it formed the woman, not from clay, but from Adam's own flesh, symbolizing their deep and intimate bond. But the serpent, cunning and hypnotic, watched Eve with eyes full of malice. Before the forbidden tree, it sowed doubt and desire in the woman's heart. The fruit, once feared, now gleamed with the promise of power. Eve felt something new, a thirst for knowledge. The aroma surrounded her, and the fruit's beauty drew her in. With a trembling hand, she gave in. She touched it, hesitated, but finally plucked the forbidden fruit. The crack of that moment echoed like a dark omen, shattering innocence and sealing humanity's fate with an irreversible choice. Eden would never be the same. After disobeying God, Adam and Eve were struck by a deep fear as they heard His voice. They hid among the bushes, aware of their nakedness and guilt. God confronted them, and judgment was swift. The serpent was cursed. Eve would suffer pain in childbirth. Adam would face a hostile world marked by toil and hardship. Banished from Eden, they watched as a flaming sword in the hand of an angel sealed the entrance, guarding the way to the tree of life. With tears in their eyes, the couple cast one last glance at paradise before stepping into the unknown. Yet even in the face of the fall, a promise remained. The offspring of the woman would crush the serpent, but the true extent of human corruption was only beginning to unfold. The first murder marked the next chapter. Abel's blood, spilled by his own brother, soaked into the earth as a dark forewarning. Centuries passed since Eden. Humanity multiplied, spreading across valleys and plains. Cities of stone and clay rose along riverbanks. Cain's descendants became skilled craftsmen, mastering metals, inventing tools, raising walls. But alongside progress, a growing darkness consumed human hearts. In the streets, merchants deceived their customers without shame. Violence became as common as the sunrise. Armed groups raided entire villages, killing, raping, enslaving. The cries of the innocent rose to the heavens as a constant accusation. From above, God looked upon His creation with sorrow. "I will wipe mankind whom I have created from the face of the earth," He declared, "for I regret that I have made them." But amid the universal corruption, one man stood apart. Noah walked with God, keeping his integrity in a perverse generation. The divine voice echoed in Noah's mind, "The end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence. Behold, I will destroy them along with the earth. Build for yourself an ark of gopher wood." Precise instructions followed, 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. 3 decks with interior compartments, a side door, a window at the top. Sealed inside and out, with pitch for complete waterproofing. The first strike of the axe echoed through the valley. Neighbors watched in curiosity as the 600-year-old man began his absurd project. Word spread quickly. The madman is building a giant boat in the middle of the desert. Years passed, and the colossal structure took shape on dry, cracked ground. Children ran around pretending to be the crazy old man. Adults placed bets on when he'd give up. "It's going to rain like never before," Noah warned. "A flood will cover the earth. Repent while there's still time." His words were met with mockery. Rain? That much rain? Impossible. Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, worked alongside him, enduring constant ridicule, preparing for a catastrophe no one else believed would come. 7 days after the animals entered the ark, the sky began to change. The serene blue turned to a suffocating gray. Thick black clouds formed with terrifying speed. The first thunderclap shook the ground like an earthquake. Lightning tore across the sky, and then the flood began. Simultaneously, the earth trembled. Giant fissures opened, releasing violent jets of water like monstrous geysers. The fountains of the great deep burst forth. Terror was instant. The crowd that once mocked now fled in panic. The first victims were swept away, children, the elderly, the weak. Inside the ark, sealed shut by God himself, Noah's family heard the desperate screams. People pounded on the wooden walls, begging to be let in. Mothers raised infants, pleading for mercy, but it was too late. The door was closed, not by Noah, but by the Lord. The ark began to sway, first gently, then violently, until it was finally lifted by the rising waters. From inside, Noah watched houses vanish, ancient trees ripped from their roots. Even the tallest mountains were soon submerged beneath relentless waters. The covenant of the rainbow was still far off. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain poured. Without end, the world had disappeared, replaced by a boundless ocean. The ark drifted alone on waters that swallowed even the highest peaks. At last, after 150 days, the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat. The waters slowly receded. Noah sent out a raven, then a dove. The dove returned with an olive leaf, a sign of renewed life. When the land was dry, the door opened. The animals stepped out into a cleansed world. Noah built an altar and offered sacrifices. God made a promise. "Never again will I destroy all living creatures." Suddenly, a multicolored arc stretched across the sky, horizon to horizon. "This is the sign of the covenant between me and you," declared the Lord. Noah and his family stood in awe at the sight. But one question lingered. Would this new humanity remain faithful? The answer came soon. Human pride would rise again, in the form of a tower meant to reach the heavens. Unity was lost, the construction abandoned, and the city fell into ruins. Babel became a symbol of human failure, marking the birth of nations with different languages and cultures. But God had a greater plan. Among the descendants of Noah, in Ur of the Chaldeans, lived Abram. Unlike those who sought their own glory, Abram would answer a divine call that would change the destiny of mankind. His name would echo through time as a symbol of faith and eternal covenant. Ur of the Chaldeans was a thriving metropolis, full of trade, religious rituals, and idolatry. In this city lived Abram, a wealthy, respected man who carried a deep sorrow. He and his wife Sarai had tried for years to have children, but without success. At 75 years old, Abram bore this silent emptiness. One night, while gazing at the starry sky, he heard a powerful voice that would change everything. God called him to leave his land, his family, and his comfort zone, promising to lead him to an unknown place. With the command came a magnificent promise. Abram would become the father of a great nation. His name would be exalted, and he would be a blessing to all peoples on earth. That night marked the beginning of a journey of faith that would reshape human history. Answering the divine call seemed like madness, leaving the prosperity of Ur for an uncertain destination, guided only by the voice of an invisible God. And yet Abram obeyed. His father Terah, his wife Sarai, and his nephew Lot went with him, crossing deserts and dangers until they reached Haran, where Terah died. The call came again, and Abram continued on to Canaan. In Shechem, God appeared to him and promised the land to his descendants, a promise that sounded ironic, since Sarai was barren. Even so, Abram built an altar and walked through the promised land with faith, living in tents like a pilgrim. A famine forced him to Egypt, where he nearly lost Sarai to Pharaoh, but returned wealthier. Still childless, he clung only to the certainty of God's promise and the conviction that his journey had a greater purpose. As years passed, the promise of descendants began to sound like a cruel joke to the ears of an aging man. Sarai, tormented by her infertility, proposed, "Sleep with my servant, perhaps I can build a family through her." Hagar, the Egyptian slave, conceived, proving that the issue wasn't Abram, but instead of relief, conflict arose. Hagar began to despise Sarai, who, overcome with jealousy, complained to her husband, Abram, said, "She is in your hands." So Sarai treated Hagar harshly, and she fled into the desert. There, an angel found her. "Return and submit to your mistress," he said, and gave her a promise, "I will greatly multiply your descendants." The child would be named Ishmael. God hears. At 86, Abram held his first son, but he was not the child of the promise. 13 years later, God appeared again. He changed Abram's name to Abraham, father of many nations, and established circumcision as a sign of the covenant. Sarai also received a new name, Sarah, and with it, a new promise. "I will give you a son through her." In the scorching heat of the desert of Mamre, Abraham rested in his tent when he saw 3 mysterious men approaching. Sensing something sacred, he ran to greet them with hospitality. He offered water, had bread baked, and meat prepared. During the meal, one of the visitors revealed something astonishing. "Within a year, Sarah, your elderly and barren wife, will have a son." From the entrance of the tent, Sarah heard and silently laughed in disbelief. But the visitor, God himself, in human form, heard her laugh and responded with a question that echoes through the centuries. "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" After the meal, the 3 visitors rose and looked toward Sodom. Then the Lord revealed to Abraham that the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah would be destroyed because of their sin. In an act of boldness and compassion, Abraham interceded for the righteous in the city, initiating one of the most extraordinary conversations in the Bible. "Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked?" he asked, trying to save the innocent. The scene ends with the Lord agreeing to spare the cities if just 10 righteous people could be found, and the angels departing to carry out their mission. A moment of faith, justice, and courage before the divine. Laughter echoed from Sarah's tent, but this time it wasn't the laugh of disbelief from a year before, it was the laugh of pure joy. In her arms, a rosy-cheeked baby eagerly nursed from breasts that should have been dry for decades. "God has made me laugh," she whispered, "and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." Abraham, now 100 years old, watched the scene with eyes full of tears. The name chosen was perfect, Isaac. He laughs. A reminder of the incredulous laughter that turned into joy. The weaning feast, when Isaac was about 3 years old, was a grand event. Abraham, recognized as a leader in Canaan, invited dignitaries and allies. At the center of the celebration stood little Isaac, the living embodiment of God's promise. But the joy would soon be disturbed. Sarah saw Ishmael, the son of Hagar, mocking Isaac. "Get rid of that slave woman and her son," she demanded, "for the slave woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." Her words cut deep into Abraham's heart. Ishmael was his son too, deeply loved since birth. But God confirmed Sarah's request. "Do not be distressed. Listen to Sarah, for it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned." The morning dew still glistened on the grass when the voice, the same voice that once called him in Ur, broke the silence. "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering." Abraham's heart shattered. How could the God of life ask for this? How could the promise be fulfilled if Isaac died? That night, Abraham did not speak to Sarah. He didn't argue with God as he had for Sodom. He simply prepared the wood in silence. Early the next morning, before the camp awoke, he saddled his donkey and left with 2 servants and Isaac, now a strong young man. As they walked, Abraham's face remained calm, but inside a war raged. Faith and reason collided with every step. He obeyed, even without understanding, because sometimes faith demands the impossible. The journey to Moriah took 3 days. 3 days of silent agony, walking with the son meant for sacrifice. 3 days to envision every possible outcome, to relive every moment since Isaac's miraculous birth. 3 days to question his own sanity. From time to time, Isaac glanced at his father with curiosity. Abraham was unusually quiet, answering only in short phrases. The servants noticed the change but dared not ask. On the 3rd morning, Abraham saw the mountain in the distance. "Stay here with the donkey," he told the servants. "The boy and I will go worship, and we will come back to you." The words echoed in his mind. Was it a lie or faith? Abraham placed the wood on Isaac's shoulders, his son carrying the wood for his own sacrifice. Abraham himself carried the fire and the knife. As they climbed, the silence was finally broken. "Father." "Yes, my son, we have the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" The question hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Abraham replied, "God himself will provide the lamb, my son." Prophetic words spoken with trembling lips and barely understood. In obedience, Abraham built an altar, arranged the wood, and bound his own son, who offered no resistance. With the knife raised, ready to strike, the voice of an angel called out, stopping him just in time. Abraham had proven his unshakable faith, and God reaffirmed his promise. A great nation would come from his descendants. This story reveals not only Abraham's extreme faith, but also God's mercy and faithfulness in response to obedience. As the sun rose, "Let's sell him for 20 pieces of silver." And so the dreamer was sold into slavery. From prison to palace, Joseph, a slave in Potiphar's house, prospered under God's blessing. Resisting the advances of Potiphar's wife, he was falsely accused and thrown into prison. There, he interpreted dreams for Pharaoh's cupbearer and baker, accurately foretelling their fates. Forgotten for 2 years, he was finally remembered when Pharaoh had disturbing dreams. Brought before the king, Joseph said, "God will give the interpretation." 7 years of abundance would be followed by 7 years of famine. The test of the brothers. Famine ravaged Canaan, just as Joseph had predicted. 7 years of plenty had passed, during which Joseph, now governor of Egypt, oversaw grain storage. In the 2nd year of famine, 10 bearded men bowed before him, brothers who didn't recognize the powerful Egyptian official as the one they had sold long ago. But Joseph knew them instantly. A flood of emotion swept over him. He decided to test them. "You are spies," he accused through an interpreter. "We are 12 brothers," they pleaded. "The youngest stayed with our father, and one is no more," demanding they bring their youngest brother as proof. Joseph held Simeon hostage and sent the others home with grain, secretly returning their silver in the sacks. When hunger drove them back, they brought Benjamin. Joseph hosted a feast, seating them in exact birth order. To their astonishment, before they left, he hid his silver cup in Benjamin's sack. His guards soon overtook them. "The one who has the cup will become my slave," he declared. When the cup was found in Benjamin's bag, the brothers tore their clothes in despair. This was the final test. Would they abandon the youngest as they once did Joseph? Judah stepped forward. "Let me stay in his place. How can I return to my father without him?" Overwhelmed with emotion, Joseph revealed his identity to the very brothers who had betrayed him. They were stunned, filled with fear, but Joseph comforted them. "It was God who sent me ahead of you to preserve life." When Pharaoh heard the news, he offered Joseph's family a home in Egypt. Jacob, long separated from his son, was brought with honor. The reunion brought him peace in his final years. Before his death, Jacob blessed his sons and gave a messianic prophecy about Judah. After he passed, the brothers feared vengeance, but Joseph reassured them, reaffirming both his forgiveness and God's sovereign plan. Joseph lived to be 110 years old. Before he died, he made the Israelites promise to carry his bones back to the promised land when God delivered them. That promise would be fulfilled centuries later during the Exodus led by Moses. Thus, Joseph's story closes, not just as a tale of personal triumph, but as a vital link between the Old Covenant and the coming deliverance of Israel, marking the beginning of a nation's formation in Egypt.